We come back from the weekend on Locked On Utah Hockey Club. The NHL player arbitration list was revealed. Barrett Hayton was not on it. Does that mean a deal might be coming soon? We're going to talk about that. Plus, we're going to be answering some Insider Club mailbag questions. So you'll want to stay locked in.
You are Locked On Utah Hockey Club, your daily podcast on the Utah Hockey Club, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everybody. This is Locked On Utah Hockey Club, your number one daily podcast on the Utah Hockey Club. I am your host, Robyn Leonio, alongside Tom Callahan. We want to thank everyone for making this show your first listen every day. We are free and available everywhere you get your shows. I also want to give a shout out to all our fans who shared with me the pictures that they sent from prospect scrimmage, and it looks like you guys had a fun time. I believe over 3,000 of you guys all went. It looked like a really good scene, plus of some really good action from what I'm understanding.
And the swag. People got their kick at the swag. I love it. So it's cool to see people repping the new colors.
Oh, yeah.
It's fun. You know what, Robyn? It's really the first little bit of excitement that is tangible now. You know, unless you went to the draft at Sphere, this is the first time you've really been able to, you know, taste, touch, smell Utah Hockey Club. And I think it's getting people excited. I think the scrimmage was great, being open to the public and getting to see, you know, some kids that are coming down the line here, the prospects, and some players that might end up, you know, wearing a Utah jersey before it's all said and done at some point in the 24-25 season. It's an exciting time right now.
Like getting a chance to see Daniel Boots get a hat trick from like that. Like, you know, you're seeing the future of the franchise here, and it's really exciting. Plus, you know, my understanding, Iginla looked pretty good. A lot of the prospects just look like they're, you know, like extremely close to the NHL level. And again, it's a prospect scrimmage, so it's all prospects against prospects. But you know, but still,
I don't know if people know this or not. By the way, Boo, B-U-T, but it's pronounced Boo, is French for goal. So Danny Goals totally makes sense that his name is Danny Boo. I like, you know, it's, of course, a little different pronunciation, Eastern Europe to French Canada. But yeah, Boo is goal in French. So that kind of works itself out on so many levels.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up. That is actually really, really cool.
Yeah.
But once again, shout out to all the people that went there, shared with us their experience. And that's just like a glimpse of what we're going to be coming up this fall for when training camp, preseason, and eventually opening night hits. But Tom,
I'm looking fired up. Let's go. Let's fast forward. Let's rip pages off the calendar.
I know. I think we're at this point. We're almost exactly 3 months. Almost exactly 3 months, because it's October 8th, and today, when everyone's listening to this, is July 8th. We're 3 months away from opening night.
I know it's going to get here so fast, and yes, we're ready. But no, we're not ready. And, you know, there's so many things going on, as we always reference. But I mean, even for this podcast, you're excited. We're going to talk about what the future looks like, but the future is going to be now very soon. And that's why it's so just amazing to me. And again, I've said it before, I'll say it again. The kudos to the staff in Utah pulling this off on every single level, because it's incredible the amount of work that's going on behind the scenes.
Absolutely. There's a lot going into it, especially with how much they've already had to do this off season as it is. It's really impressive what they're doing so far.
It's nuts.
But let's
Good job, everybody.
Let's get into you know, the more meat of this show, Tom. Talk about the NHL player arbitration list. There's a full list of all the players who by the deadline submitted a request for arbitration, because they didn't like what their offer was. So they're like, you know what? Let's go to arbitration. I think I'm worth more than this, or worth more term. If you watch the list, Barrett Hayton was notable absence, so he did not put one out there. Also, another quick note I want to put out there: JJ Mosier, who is now whose rights was sold to Tampa in that Sorgachev trade, he did file for arbitration.
Yes,
No.
no Utah players on the list whatsoever. So that's a good sign. Not that there were a ton, but I don't know. Maybe I am a little surprised to see Mosier on there with Tampa Bay. But I guess when you're trading a guy into a new part of an organization, it might be a little harder to get a deal done that quick. And so again, remember, just because arbitration's been filed, even once you get
It
a
won't mean
date set,
it won't. Yeah, it doesn't mean it will go to arbitration.
yeah, it does not mean it's going to get that far. You have right up until basically the award is handed down to figure something out between the two of you. So, I
Yeah, I
mean, this
mean,
is not a panic move yet.
and again, Coyotes fans who are still sticking around very well know only a couple years ago the deal with Lawson Krause, he filed for arbitration. Arbitration date was set. They were in the arbitration room, and they made a final deal before the actual arbiter made a decision.
Yeah.
So,
couple of surprises on here for me, Robyn. Did you want to get into that at all?
yeah, what are some of the surprises?
So Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen for the Sabres, for a guy who who came on last year, and the Sabres are saying, you know what, while we're gonna kind of continue, I think originally the Sabres' idea was that Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen was going to kind of be not the guy, and they were going to go to Levi. Well, then UPL, as they call him in Buffalo, had to be the guy while Levi went down to Rochester and is now learning. And I think the plan's reversed. Levi's going to stay in Rochester a little bit longer. He's going to continue to learn. Now they need UPL. But that's weird to me that you're not going to come to a deal with this guy. So I think that was interesting. Natchez is not a surprise that he's on there. I still think he could go somewhere. Kirill Marchenko for the Blue Jackets, that would be a big loss if they end up letting him walk. So I think that's a big one. Oliver Wahlstrom for the Islanders, and then Lindgren for the Rangers. Also, two more guys that I would be shocked if you didn't see deals reached with them. But it's interesting. I mean, once you get into the arbitration courtroom, this is when feelings can get hurt because the team is over here trying to tell you why this guy stinks, and they love him.
Yeah.
They want him as cheap as possible. And then the guys across the room going, no, I'm fantastic, and I deserve as much money as possible.
Yeah, that's really going to mess the relationship between the team and the player. Especially, imagine being a player and being in an arbitration room and being told, this is why you deserve less money. Because you're like, what? Like, why? Like, that's just, I would hate that. I really would.
And I mean, you could sit there and listen to the team say, well, you're not good at this, you're not good at that. And why do you guys want me then? Why are you fighting to keep me? But if I'm so terrible, if I don't do X, Y, and Z, but so and that has happened in the past. Some guys don't ever quite get over it. I mean, look, it's a business at the end of the day. I get it, but you run that risk when you go to arbitration with guys.
But Barrett Hayton, as we mentioned, in notable absence. Do you think, Tom, this means that we're probably within pretty close range of a deal with Hayton, or what are we maybe looking at here?
Well, to me, if it's not there, it is a positive from a standpoint of to not put in for it means you either feel like you're close
in the ballpark around there.
Yeah. So that something's going to get hashed out here. Or I suppose the extreme polar opposite of that is nothing's happening. It's not going to happen at all.
Yeah.
And, there's kind of an agreement behind the scenes. Maybe they would be trying to move the player to find a place for him if they could find one. But I don't have any knowledge either way with this. I haven't spoken to anybody in Hayton's camp. But I mean, if you're an optimist, which I am, I think that's a good thing that they're not going to arbitration and it's not on the list.
I would surely be on that optimist side too. And I feel like the team has grown in appreciation for Barrett Hayton in the last year or two, and I feel like he's found a good role with the team. So it's just like, all right, you want to make sure you at least get a deal with them, and I think that's kind of maybe how it maybe all hashed out. Maybe he was saying, maybe out of respect, we're pretty close enough. I won't file for arbitration, but let's keep working this out. I'm pretty sure he trusts them enough because look, Bill Armstrong so far hasn't failed on getting a good deal, like a decent contract deal out there.
It does help when you have a GM who tends to be a man of his word, and if you say something and you follow through on it. I mean, let's face it, there have been some guys who are kind of shystery over the history of the game. And then there are guys who are good, upstanding citizens and will be forthright. If I were a general manager, I think the most valuable thing I could do to a player is just be honest with them, whether it's good or bad. Yep. I think that's the most important thing you can do for a player. And even if the player, if the honesty is not good from their viewpoint, I mean, they might be a little annoyed about it or put off by it. But at the end of the day, it's the most valuable thing you can do for that player. So I think that, if the relationship is good, which we have no reason to believe it isn't, they're not on the ARB list. I mean, I think that is a good thing. I think we'll probably see something sooner than later.
Now, here's a question for you, and this is something that maybe like something that came to my head, as something that you can just completely spitball on here, Tom. If you were Bill Armstrong, what kind of contract, based off of maybe what we see, anything we've seen from Hayton in the past, would you be working with on here?
Well, and as I go back through and just take a glance at the Puckpedia page at where this team is right now, as far as guys signed, they have 13 forwards, 7 defensemen, 2 goaltenders right now. So you're at 22. That would be 23. And again, not everybody who's here on a contract right now. I mean, this is hypothetical, how many guys could be on the opening day roster, because you can still move guys up and down.
Yep.
Certain players are 2-way contracts. So there's moving pieces here. I don't know. I think it'd be interesting to me to see what Hayton's thought on term is. I actually don't think it's going to come down to the money. I am more interested in what the term is and the sticking point here. As I just kind of look through, and again, we talk about down the road, and this is why I'm interested in the term, because this next season, so for the 25-26 season, you've got up front Kerfoot, Bukestad, McBain, Gunther, and Carcone, who are coming due. Defensively, you know Ian Cole's on a 1-year deal. So I think you're a little bit more set on the D side of things than you are on the forward side of things, but you're going to have some contracts moving out. And the total of those contracts, I'm just going to do some very, very rudimentary math here. We're talking about $10 million. So you're going to anticipate the cap is going up. So I think, I don't know, I don't mind putting a decent term on that if the price is right for me with Hayton. So, but I do think that might be part of the sticking point, because remember, we've talked about, okay, is a guy going after a bridge contract here, trying to get to a point in his career where he's entering his prime and going to get paid well, as a guy trying to go for long-term, is trying to hit the home run. Like, it's kind of hard to say without really getting inside the player's mind. But I think at this point, I wouldn't mind term for Leighton if the budget is reasonable, because I think, again, Utah is going to have space that frees up. There's going to be turnover in the roster. I think they're going to be okay. I actually really, and honestly, in hindsight, it might be the best thing that Montour did not come to Utah. Not having his money and his term tied up like that in a guy who's on the other side of 30 might be the biggest blessing that this team ends up with.
You're right, because you can give at least fair term, and we know, because as we talked about with Craig Morgan last week, Bill Armstrong doesn't give long-term contracts. I mean, he probably will eventually when that time comes, but he doesn't. He's not known for that. So we'll definitely have to see what that looks like. But
and he's only 24. I mean, young player. He's got some room to grow in front of him. Obviously not a full season last year, just the 33 games, but I still think he's young. He's got a ton of upside. I feel comfortable with the guy, especially a guy who can play center, can play the wing. I think that there's enough room for him. There's going to be enough turnover in the coming years where if he continues to prove himself, he's an asset. And let me take the other view for a moment and play devil's advocate. Let's say it doesn't pan out. Let's say it's not a great contract, because he is, even in a year or two, still in his mid-20s. That's a movable asset. Some other team will think, a change of scenery might do him good. You know what I mean? Right. So I don't mind it. I think you can look at term for Barrett Hayton if that's available. So I would have no problem with it.
We'll definitely explore it further down the road. Some other conversations we can have maybe later this week, later this month, as we maybe hear anything that gets closer. But we'll put a stick in that for now, because we got to get to some mailbag questions. We asked our insiders if they had any questions for us on the show. We're going to get into those right after this. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games. The sports aren't sporting like I want them to, but FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets at any time I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with the boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everybody every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com. Start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Let's keep things going on this episode of Locked On Utah Hockey Club. I want to remind everyone that you can be a part of the Utah Hockey Club Insider Club. So you can be able to text us one-on-one, be a part of the mailbag, which we're about to do. So you get exclusive access to that. Other exclusive content coming very soon. Very easy. All you have to do is, once again, text to 801-760-9033 to get started. For a couple more days, we're using the promo code SUMMER50 on sign up, and you'll get 50% off your first 2 months. All right, Tom, let's get into these mailbag questions that our insiders from this Insider Club sent on over. And I want to start with, I think we can spend a decent, whole segment here on this one that I got from Caden, one of our insider Caden. He asked, if you were in Bears position, what would your defensive pairings and forward line combinations look like, given the roster as it stands today? I actually had a graphic, and it was something I was actually showing Tom about last week. I was like, I think about putting this together. So, Caden, I'm glad you brought this up. I'm like, all right, cool. It's going to allow me to kind of push this out and see what I can do. I will say, as a little bit of a note here, the graphic I put out is assuming that by opening night, Barrett Hayton signs his contract, because he still holds the rights. So I'm assuming, all right, we're good here. So this is what my projected lines are, Tom. We got Clayton Keller, Hayton, and Schmaltz on that top line. Lawson Krause, Logan Cooley, Dylan Gunther on your second. But Matthias Michelli, Nick Bukestad, Alex Kerfoot on third. Michael Carcone, Kevin Stenlund, Josh Doan as your fourth forward line. And then do you want me to go to defense now, or do you want to turn to you and get your thoughts on my forward?
So, interesting. A couple of things that I have kind of juggled there. I actually have Doan up on the right side of the third line. I think he's going to be that jump this year, and I have Kerfoot down on the fourth, along with Stenlund. And I'm kind of kicking around the idea. I have Bukestad as the 3C, Michelli on that left wing, but and again, it's tough to say, but in the middle on 4, if Stenlund's not playing the wing, he could be over there. I think that and your top lines, well, I'll come back to the bottom 6. Your top lines, I think we're pretty much on the same page as far as those go, because it just seems like that's the way things are going to pan out, right, for this team, the way the lines are kind of reading themselves. I mean, that makes the most sense. There's just the questions of where some of these guys could possibly end up if they make some moves in camp. And I know we're going to get into it a little bit later on, but if any of the rookies, have a good camp coming out of camp, where do they fit in?
Yeah. This doesn't include, the other stuff, because you still have those extras that, that will be, might be a scratch on even given day. They might just fill in if, let's say, Stenlund needs a break, or anyone else needs just a break for a couple games. You have
where we drop it in Spicy Tuna. We just paid Spicy Tuna. He needs to play, right? So, maybe he's a guy that might slot in there on the fourth line on a little bit more regular basis. And of course, when you bring in a player like Stenlund, you want him to find a home. But if he doesn't right away, I don't panic about that. I think that I want him to kind of find his way and take a little bit of time. If he's the 13th forward, that's okay, and he can find his way in and out of the lineup. But I expect him to be a contributor right away. So, and again, Arizona's got a nice complement of guys who can play center, can play wing. You can move guys around. So they have some flexibility there.
Certainly. And we'll definitely have to see. And it looks like we are pretty close, I guess, on those forwards. Kind of curious though where we are on the defense. My defensive pairings right now for my projections are Sergachev and Marino as your top pairing, Ian Cole and Durzi as your second pairing. And once again, heads up, this is from left to right. And then Valimaki and Kesselring as your third pairing.
Okay, I'm kind of mixing it up here. So I don't put Cole in my top 4. I think he's a 5'6" guy at this point, and he's there for his leadership. I don't think he's going to handle top 4 minutes at 36. So now that's expensive to have him as a 5'6" guy. They probably will try to put him 3-4. I just don't know if he's capable of logging that kind of ice time at this point in his career. That's fair. I have Valimaki actually with Marino and Durzi with Sergachev.
Interesting. I was originally going to put Durzi with Sergachev, but I also thought to myself this, Tom, I don't know. Maybe it might be the trauma of putting two more offensively minded D on one pair from my years as a Sharks fan when they had Burns and tried to put Burns and Carlson together. Did not work. I was like, nope. I got to get it. I got to pair him with a shutdown D man, and that's kind of why I put Marino up there.
I think we're kind of both in agreement that basically Sergachev's 1, Kesselring is 6. And then it kind of fills in around that. Like I could see
you really can move the other. Yeah. Like outside of those two, it is a mixed bag and you could really do a lot.
I'll tell you who this is actually going to depend on for me, Robyn, is Cole. Ian Cole is actually the linchpin to how this all falls. If he comes in, has a great camp, is in terrific shape, looks like he can handle minutes and cracks that, 3-4 D pair, then this is a different look. And you have that look right there. If he is 5'6" and is, going to be in that 12-15 minute a night range, then it's different. And plus, what kind of minutes are you going to ask him to play? Are you going to ask him to penalty kill? Are you going to put him out there in those defensive situations? Does he still have that? And that's what they're going to have to evaluate in camp. I mean, make no mistake, they're paying him for his leadership. They're paying him for his championship experience. They're paying him because he is a guy who can come in and be that voice. And then they're paying Sergachev to be the number 1 defenseman. Knock on wood, everything is healthy with him and he's raring to go. And they've got a number 1 guy sewn up for a nice price for the foreseeable future. And everything in between will fall into place. So I think Ian Cole is actually the key to the defense pairings for me.
Yeah, certainly. I think, it definitely does depend on, is he going to come out because you're right. Is he going to come out the way he is going to be a 3-4 or a 5-6? And that will significantly mix up what it would look like.
Yes, absolutely. And, how much ice time is he going to be able to give you? How much, of everything, and how much do you have to manage his minutes? How much is he in and out of the lineup? As a 36-year-old, I don't see him playing all 82 games. I'm sure every player wants to play all 82, but I just don't know that he does. So, which is okay. Again, it's okay. And there are going to be people out there going, well, you're paying this guy. He needs to be out there. Last year with Vancouver, Cole was 1627. The year before with Tampa, 1701. But previous to that, he had really been 15, 16 minutes a game. And I mean, going all the way back to his time with St. Louis, he had a couple years where he touched 17 minutes a game and has done it let's see, he did it with the Penguins a couple of times, the Blue Jackets, but, and actually, like I say, last year with Tampa Bay, 22-23 with Tampa Bay, 1701, but 16-27. So the Canucks had him out there. They relied on him. So if he's able to handle those minutes and he is on the 3-4, then great, more power to him. And I think that would be fantastic. But again, 36, father time's undefeated. At what point does the drop off start to necessitate, hey, we got to pull you back to 15, 14, 13? Hopefully not, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to see. We'll still got more to get to. A couple more questions we're going to get to from our from members of our Insider Club. We'll get to those right after this. All right, let's keep going on this episode of Locked On Utah Hockey Club. Once again, Robyn Leonio and Tom Callahan. We're going to go and finish up a couple more questions from our insiders, members of our Utah Hockey Club Insider Club. So once again, exclusive content, able to text us on 101. And we did a call for a mailbag. These guys get exclusive access to that mailbag. We got our next one, and this one is from our insider member, John. John asks us, what is your prediction of Utah's record at the end of the season? Now, I will start by saying this, John. I feel like a prediction for the record is an incredibly difficult thing to predict, because we're talking, wins, losses, and overtime losses, all in one. That literally just bring up standings points.
Give me in terms of like wins and losses. Let's not end ties. So let's just go 3 columns here. Let's not go 12 columns.
Okay. Gotta think how I can go. I think this team is capable probably of 40 wins, maybe just under 40 wins, like high 30s, 40s.
Okay.
So like I would say, what is that? So 82 game season. I'll say 38. So that would the rest be 44, right? 38, 44. But some of those 44 losses I'll have as OT losses. So that kind of bumps them up in points a little bit.
So let's start with last year as our basis. In 82 games, they went what is essentially 36, 41, and 5. That's a 470 win percentage. 77 points, just 13th out of 16 teams in the Western Conference. Now, out of the teams in front of them, I think a few teams have gotten worse. Some have gotten markedly better.
Yep.
But so the question becomes to me, all right, where is Arizona or now Utah, as I'm looking at Arizona on the standings from last year, where are they picking up wins? So I think they're picking up wins now against Seattle, Calgary, Minnesota, potentially St. Louis. But I mean, you have to wonder, I don't think the Golden Knights getting the last playoff spot this past season was really representative of where they were last year. However, they are kind of, in a little bit of a beating roster wise. And not that, please listen to what I'm going to say here. Do not say that I am saying Colorado and Utah are on the same page right now. They aren't. However, the Avalanche are in cap hell right now.
Oh yeah, they are.
So they, as a byproduct of that, will have to lose some of their money situation one way or another, and it's going to hurt. So that could be an extra win that you might be able to wring out of the Avalanche, because remember, they kind of went through a skid last year too, where they were struggling. So for me to go from 36, 41, and 5 in those 82 games, I think this team gets above 500 this year.
Okay.
I think they were in a lot of close games. They were finding ways, especially in the back half of the season, under difficult circumstances. Let's face it, it's not been ideal the last couple of years. I think that number almost flips itself around. I can see them getting to maybe a 39 win season, maybe to 40 with a little bit of luck in there. So that, to me, if you go to 40, then so you would be what, 40, 37, and 5 is. I think it's possible they get to 40 wins. I really do. And that's not the easiest thing to do, but the teams that did not, listen to this, the teams that didn't get 40 wins last year: Minnesota, Calgary, Seattle, Anaheim, Chicago, and the Sharks. So I still think now the Sharks should be better. The Hawks should be better, but I still think Utah is better than those teams. I think they do get to 40 wins.
40 is definitely, I think, a sure possibility. And I feel like based off of that record you said like 40, 37, and 5. I was gonna sit, at give maybe a couple extra like OT losses, maybe to get it to OT, get the extra point. I feel like, given that said, if we use based off of standing points, we're right around range of what I was thinking, between that 85 to 90 point season.
And this team's going to have to be tough enough to win those 1-goal games, because that's what's going to make the difference. By the way, the playoffs last year, 98 points. So getting to 90 is nice. When you finished with 77 last year, if you make that big of a jump, if you go up to 90 points this year, that's great. But now you have another 10 before you're in that playoff picture. And remember what I said, Robyn. I said, this is the year Utah sneaks into that 11, maybe that 10 to get there. So 11 was 81 points. That's only 4 more points.
Yep.
To get to 10 was 87 points. So that's 10 more points. I think they can somewhere wring that out of their standings if they reverse that wins and losses. That's your 10 points. That's exactly where I think they are this year, is in that 10 spot. And with some luck, 9 challenging for 8.
And it certainly is possible. This team is continuing to get more competitive every day from what we're seeing. And they're, as we've mentioned multiple times before, all the everydayers already know this, is they're not quite there yet to actually make the jump into the playoffs. They could surprise us, sure, but they're not quite there yet. And but give them about what, year, 2 years, they'll be there.
Well, it's going to have to be at least 2 years. I think year 3, year 4 is where you're going to see them really starting to get into it. The next 2 years, the spotlight belongs to Edmonton, Nashville, and Colorado. Colorado, because everybody's waiting to see how big the dumpster fire gets with the cap situation. Nashville, because they just went nuts in free agency, and really they're mortgaging themselves into a 2-year window. I mean, in years 3 and 4 of those deals, they might not look very good, but they look great right now. And then for Edmonton, they've just gone and reloaded, and they're going right back after it. And I think the Oilers will be better next year. Florida will be worse. Maybe next year's Edmonton's year.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to see. We got about a couple more questions, and these I'll just put two last questions on one of the little thought bubble below us, and these are actually both from the same person. Yes, you can submit more than one questions, but sometimes we'll we'll do what we can to answer as much as we can. So just a heads up for that. This is from our Insider Club member, Luke. He said, who do you think makes the biz junk from last year? And do you think Tij Iginla makes the opening night roster?
I'm going to start with the second question first. Yes, Iginla makes the opening night roster. They're going to want to see him.
Yeah.
Unless his camp is extraordinarily bad and he just clearly isn't ready, I think they do want to see him in NHL games that matter, not just preseason. I think they're going to want to see him out there, see how he fares. Are they going to run him up the 10 games and burn that first year in the ELC? I don't know about that, but I think he will make the opening night roster, and he's going to get a look at least a couple of games. So yes, I think he will be there on opening night.
Yeah. And if he plays a couple of games, don't expect him to be playing like top line minutes or anything like that. Just getting him a look, getting his cup of coffee. Is like, all right, let's see how he can play at the highest level. And then it's like, all right, this is what you need to truly work on. We'll send you back over to Kelowna.
I think too, I would give him a chance up and down the lineup just to see, especially through training camp. Put him on a top line, see what he does. Put him on PP1, see what he does. Let him try to kill penalties, see what he does. Put him in all those situations in camp. And then once you get into that, NHL regular season, I do think it's important for him to get some games that matter top 6 minutes, but that would depend on opponent. So, I mean,
and it also depends on who exactly your pairing is. We talked about what the pairing the pairings could be on line combinations, but we didn't talk about what Iginla's would be in there and where he would look like specifically along with because again, chemistry is huge. I'm always an advocate of starting a player out, like let's say like Iginla or someone really young with someone like Lawson Krause, who is a leader, someone who's going to be like an on ice coach.
And I think when it comes to Iginla, and for fans who are saying, what would it take for them to keep him up and make the full year roster? Number one, he has to be a top 6 forward. I unless he shows anything but that, I don't think you keep him in the NHL. So if he shows somehow in camp that he is a top 6 forward, okay, now you've got some questions that need answering. But I think he'll be there. I just don't see him staying the whole year. But he'll get some games in for sure.
No, certainly we'll get some games in. But also, for heads up, anyone new to the NHL, once he does get sent back down to Kelowna, which is the WHL, part of the CHL, the major junior team that he played for last season, he will not be eligible to return to Utah. So he will spend the rest of his season there, and then we'll get another shot next season. And
you don't want to healthy scratch a guy if you can avoid it. But I mean, you may see that because it's only the games that they're playing. It's not the games they're sitting. So 10 games for Utah is not 10 games for Iginla.
It reminds me a little bit of what Seattle did with Shane Wright. They kept healthy scratching him, and all of a sudden it was like December, and he was still on the Kraken, but still hadn't reached his 10 games yet. And all of a sudden, and then because of that, because of how many days he was with the roster, it's like, oh, look at that, you're eligible to go to Coachella Valley now.
Oh yeah, how about that? No, Seattle had a plan.
They did. They knew it. They knew it was up.
Yes, they knew what they were doing for the start there. But so yeah, that one. And then Robyn, who's making the biggest jump for you?
Oh, who's making the biggest jump? This might be a little bit of a cop out for me because I really liked what this player did last season.
Okay.
But I really feel like Matias Maccelli is going to make significant extra strides again. Like he's he's been making massive jumps every single year. Like
putting a lot of pressure on.
You know what? I don't care at this point. I want to see this guy be really good.
Okay.
I want to see him make a huge jump. He's just really impressed me. He's become one of my favorite players on this team.
I don't mind that. I don't mind that at all. You know who I think is, and this might be low-hanging fruit, but it really is my answer, is I think it's Josh Doan. I think Josh Doan is primed to just year over year massive improvement. I think he got a little taste of what success requires last year. And you know what I mean? You can have your dad telling you till he's blue in the face, hey, this is what it takes and this is what you should be doing. But until you're out there and you're in the middle of it, and then you're like, oh, I see. And so now he'll figure out how to apply that. I expect him to make huge gains year over year. I can't wait to see how he comes out.
Take a look at how he ended last season, right? Like he spent the entirety of most of last season with Tucson, and he played great with Tucson. Was one of the leading point getters with the Roadrunners, and then he makes his way up to the Coyotes, and just like oh, he's gonna get a couple. He's gonna get 1 or 2 games and see what happens. But he just keeps scoring. I think he gets 2 goals on his first game, and he just keeps impressing, keeps scoring, keeps hitting points every single game. I'm 100% right on that. I feel like Josh Doan is primed for a huge jump like that.
Yeah, I think it's awesome too that really the Utah Hockey Club is primed for this season that could really potentially be an explosive one in terms of both individual and team growth. And I think it's going to give fans hope for the future. And again, we already know with 32,000 season ticket deposits, it's probably more by now, that they are not going to be lacking for fan support. Clearly, we see, we feel, we hear the buzz and the excitement around this team. It's palpable. So knowing that, I think we're looking at a standpoint here, Robyn, where Utah, has those couple of years that are going to be so exciting because you're going to see some breakout performances. You're going to see some dynamic games. You're going to see some clunkers. where some nights kids get lost and some night they mess up and they make big mistakes and they end up in the back of the net. It happens. So
That's part of it
man,
being a young team.
absolutely it is. It's part of the learning curve. That's why you're bringing Ian Cole in for the defense, and try to help them along. So I don't know, but I like it. I really like where they are. I think they did a great job through the draft and so far free agency. I don't know that I can say too many more good things. Very few teams have set themselves up as well for future success as Utah has so far.
Yeah, and I feel like what you said, about how this team is really going to say a lot. I mean, this year is really going to say a lot of, I think, the trajectory of what this team, how well they do this year, Tom. I feel like will give me an estimate even more so of how close they are true to that competitiveness. Like we've been giving you guys the estimate, like couple years, 2-3 years to get to that competitive range, and then a little bit more than that to really be within neck and neck with some of the top. But I think this year will really tell us exactly how close they are to that.
Yep, and that's the best part about it is we're gonna have fun finding out together as they play the games. That's the exciting part. So I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be an awful lot of fun this year to be a fan of this hockey club and just watch how they grow and mature out there on the ice.
Absolutely. Any final thoughts before we close things off on this show?
Yes. Did you happen to see, and I retweeted it, so if you want to look at my Twitter at Callahan on air, but Utah Hockey Club had Sergachev's first day on the job on their Twitter. And so if you watch real fast at the end, Robyn, they hand him a little practice jersey there, and he folds it. And on one side is the 9, and on the other side is the 8. So 98 for Sergachev.
I love that.
Yes.
Yeah, they're always getting that little glimpse to see what's
a
going to
little taste. That little taste.
Little taste.
Yeah.
But by the way, also just the practice jerseys. I didn't even mention those. Like they started showing those like during dev camp, and they look pretty good.
Yeah, I mean they're keeping it simple right now. So
they're practice jerseys, so nothing to write home about. But I mean, I like them.
And don't forget, Fanatics has taken over this year, so they're going to put their spin on things too.
Yeah. And that's why no one's been able to buy a jersey yet,
right?
Because the jerseys that you saw at draft, by the way, aren't the actual jerseys. They're kind of just that was like a one of one that they made.
Right. So yeah, it's going to be a minute, especially with a whole new company taking over. So, and it takes knowing as someone who has worked for hockey clubs and been in on the jersey ordering process, it takes months to get your order done because what they do is they sew an entire batch at once.
And imagine being a new team that just got essentially, founded just a couple of months ago and having to really ramp that up.
You're at the back of the queue too. I mean, everybody else is getting their stuff first. The Macklin Celebrini jerseys have been on the Stitcher for months now, but Utah's at the back of the line.
They're flying off the shelves.
Absolutely.
All right. That's going to be it for this episode of the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast. If you like what you heard, don't forget to leave a review, like, comment, subscribe if you have yet to already. We're available everywhere you get your shows, including on YouTube, SiriusXM, ad-free on Amazon Music. Once again, don't forget to join that Insider Club if you want to be a part of next week's mailbag. Once again, just text to 801-760-9033 to get started. In just a couple more days, use the promo code SUMMER50 for 50% off your first 2 months. Interact with us also on social media. We are on X, Instagram, Threads, just it all at LO_NHL Utah. I am at Robyn_Leonio, and Tom Callahan is at Callahan on air. Ask us a question we might answer right back on a future episode. We reserve those, most of those questions for our mailbag, but we still pay attention to social media every now and then, and we'll see what we can do on those. But other than that, thanks again for listening to today's episode. We'll see you guys next time.